Today, I'm going to give you some information and raise some questions about Woolf's text, A Room of One's Own. In this piece of writing, Woolf raises questions of the material conditions under which women do or don't write. Woolf was asked to give 2 lectures in 1928 on the topic of women and fiction. As she says in the piece, it's hard to know what this means. Women as represented by fiction? Women writers of fiction? Women who consume fiction? She expanded the 2 lectures into the 6-chapter essay we have before us. Before we go farther, we need to ask some questions, because A Room of One's Own, which I'm labeling an essay for ease of discussion, is actually quite genre-bending. So, what do we expect from an essay? What do we expect from a lecture? And what do we expect from fiction? It's important to have these things in mind as you read the text so that you can pay attention to how Woolf does and doesn't satisfy your expectations in the various genres. Now would be a good time to pause the video and write down in your notebook your preliminary answers to these questions. In A Room of One's Own, Virginia Woolf uses an old song, the Ballad of the Four Marys, to derive the names for some of the characters. This is a song from the 16th century or earlier, and it tells the story of Mary Hamilton, a waiting lady to the Queen of Scots, who became pregnant by the King of Scots. Now, we can imagine that for a woman to refuse the king's demands would be impossible. It would also be impossible for that woman to bear the king's child while working for the queen. So, in the song, depending on which version you hear, Mary Hamilton either exposes the baby or puts it in a small boat and sends it out to sea. Of course, this is discovered, and Mary Hamilton is hanged. The song is called The Four Marys because the Queen of Scots had 4 waiting ladies named Mary: Mary Beaton, Mary Seton, Mary Carmichael, and Mary Hamilton. You will notice in Woolf's text that the names of the first 3 Marys are mentioned, but not the name of Mary Hamilton. You might ask yourself why this is. One of the important themes Woolf takes up in A Room of One's Own is education, and how it differs depending on which sex you were born. Woolf's mother, Julia Stephen, taught all of her children at home when they were very small, so all of them learned to read and write and do basic arithmetic at home. But when the boys were around 7, they were sent to school, and eventually to university, while the girls were taught at home. This is partly an economic issue. Boys' educations were expensive, so many families saved money by not educating the girls in any systematic way. In Woolf's family, which was an intellectual family, the girls were not left completely on their own. Virginia's father supervised her voyage through his extensive library, and Vanessa had art tutors to help her learn to paint. But the girls' education was certainly haphazard compared to the boys'. If someone wanted to learn Greek, she could, but if she were not interested in reading, no one was going to make her. Being boys gave Toby and Adrian Stephen access to not just knowledge, but also to people and families who could help their careers. By contrast, the girls stayed at home, emerging to visit the sick with their mother, but with little independence. Woolf saw clearly that what the boys had access to was money in the form of the ancient endowments of their schools and college, which subsidized their attendance there, money in terms of a living allowance that they controlled the use of, money in the influential people they befriended at school and college. The girls did not have any of this. Woolf narrates the inevitable result of this in A Room of One's Own. The men's colleges are old and rich. The women's colleges are new and poor. The men's colleges were funded not just by their ancient endowments, but by continued donations from each generation of former students. Women, who had only been allowed to own property in their own name for around 50 years when Woolf wrote the book, could not sponsor their alma maters in the same way. Worse, even for the current generation of students, in 1928, women had been allowed to sit exams and take degrees at Oxford and Cambridge for only a few years. Up to then, they did the same work that men did, but they could not benefit from it professionally. The professions of law and medicine also excluded women until around 1920, so even if the women students had been allowed to take degrees, they wouldn't have been able to work at a lot of the jobs their brothers did. This all leads Woolf to an important question, whether it's better to be locked in or to be locked out. Why do you think she phrases the question this way? Why might it be an important question to ask? And what aspects of society is she questioning by asking this? And all of that leads us to some questions to ask on our own behalf, questions that will help us understand Woolf's choices in this text. What does Woolf get from contrasting the dinners at the men's and women's colleges? How does this advance the argument she is making? Why does she go to the library? What are we to make of her trip there and what she sees on the way? And finally, what comparison between the lives of men and women do you think she is making through these stories? After visiting the various colleges and making her observations, Woolf's narrator, who might be Woolf or might be a character never named but assumed to be called Mary Hamilton, goes to the British Museum to research the subject she's supposed to be lecturing on. What do you make of her experience in the reading room? How would you characterize her intellectual and emotional responses to what she discovers in her reading? What about the young man whose own research she observes? What do you make of that? After her morning at the museum, she goes to lunch at a nearby restaurant. What does she think about while she is eating? How about when she finishes eating and goes to pay for her meal? Why do you think this is significant? Woolf takes her insights about how material conditions affect one's ability to write and makes up the character of Shakespeare's sister. Woolf stipulates that this sister is just as talented, just as driven as Shakespeare. The only difference between them is that Judith Shakespeare is born a girl. We might consider this a thought experiment on Woolf's part. What do you think she wants us to understand through this story? Having thought about Shakespeare's sister, Woolf gives us another woman writer, this one a modern writer, who she labels Mary Carmichael. She is the author of a made-up novel called Life's Adventure that Woolf's narrator pretends to have picked up randomly. Why do you think Woolf wants to bring up modern fiction now, at this point in her essay? Woolf asserts that one way we know the fiction is modern is that the two female characters, who share a laboratory, like each other. They are friends. This is a novel relationship for women, Woolf asserts, who in most of literary history have been presented in terms of their relations to men, not to one another. So, what does Woolf bring to her essay by inventing this imperfect novel and this writer who has potential, even if she is not a genius like Jane Austen? At the beginning of this lecture, I asked you to write down your expectations for various genres of literature. As we've gone along, I hope you've seen some of the ways that Woolf is toying with our expectations. This essay is a little bit lecture, a little bit essay, and a lot of fiction. What does this mix do for Woolf? What does she want you to take away from the essay? Gather your thoughts, and we'll meet in the weekly discussion.